Howdy, Applejack here. It's been a hot minute, hasn't it? Seems like a heck of a little longer than a few weeks, that's for sure. Hammer Moon might have threatened all Equestria, but she didn't really affect a lot of ponies personally. All she did was delay the sunrise by an hour or two. Only us 6 got to see what really happened way out in that abandoned castle. But Discord? He heard a lot of ponies. Almost everyone in Ponyville, Canterlot, and a few other towns I ain't heard about. And that kind of hurt doesn't just go away after a few days in a party. Nothing's wrong on the surface, maybe, but every pony in town's been acting just a little more spooked than usual. They end chats faster or won't stop talking at all, going in circles about the same thing over and over. And every pony's looking over their shoulders where they weren't before. Ponyville used to be the nicest, simplest, all-around friendliest town you could hope to settle in. Now it's feeling like a fool who's lost their innocence just a bit too soon. Guess I can see things a bit clearer than most since I was supposed to embody honesty and all that. I think the creepiest thing's how some ponies really do act like they've forgotten, pretend they don't know why everyone else is acting like a lizard fresh out of a Dragon Slayer's convention. But you can tell they still remember by the shadows in the corners of their eyes. It scares me how easily some ponies will lie to protect themselves. I guess I got off easier than most folks. Discord might have taken a personal interest in me and the other elements, but I know what I did and why I did it, and I know why I was wrong. Twilight helped me see that all them lies I was spreading were only making things worse. I was just too scared of what could happen to us to admit it. And when it happened anyway, I just lied to myself that it weren't my fault. I didn't want to admit I was wrong. I didn't want to admit I tried things my way and failed. And when I saw my family had gone crazy, I just kept lying to myself that they were better off not seeing the world gone cuckoo. Then old Twilight came and got my head on straight, and I realized what a dunderhead I've been. All lying really did was get me down a dead end because I was too much of a coward to face the truth when it turned ugly. Yeah, I know I was a coward. I ain't afraid to admit it. The brave, reliable, most dependable pony's Applejack got her tail between her legs and couldn't face her own element. But I swear on the princesses, it ain't happening again. I ain't never turning chicken again just 'cause I learned something that ain't pleasant. Not after what it almost cost me, my family, and the entire world. And that's the whole, honest truth. I don't care if it burns me alive. I ain't never turning my back on the truth ever again. Of all the things I expected to happen today, you can bet getting a personal summons from the princess for me, personally, wasn't one. Men told to bring along Applebloom sure weren't up there either. Being escorted by one of the princess's personal chariots, let's just say that weren't expected either. Twilight was just as clueless as me when she delivered the message, and the letter didn't say much of anything. Just to bring myself and Applebloom, and that transportation was on its way. Applebloom was almost as shocked as me, just a little scared of meeting the princesses. For about 10 seconds, before she started running up and down the place shouting about being a Kingdom Crusader Royal something or other. Big Mac promised he could handle the farm for the day without too much trouble. Any other day I wouldn't have doubted him, but lately, sure, he's been working hard enough, almost too hard, and yes, I know I'm a hypocrite for saying it. But he's been avoiding Winona like the key to pox and treating work in the fields like he's taking some nasty medicine. I swear yesterday I saw him doing it with his eyes closed. It ain't hard to guess why. Maybe we all ought to bite the apple core and sign up for a meeting with them head doctors after all. At least Granny Smith's been mostly normal, just complaining about her hip acting up more than usual. Somehow, I don't think Discord bothered to fix her hip before he made dancing the only thing she could think about. Chariot boys are right on time. Applebloom asked them about 1,000,000 questions, and they answer about 0. Twilight asks me to say hello to the princesses for her. I promise I will. Up in the air we go! What the hell were the gals who invented this thing thinking? Haven't they ever heard of seatbelts? Applebloom doesn't seem to know she's supposed to be scared out of her wits being this high up. That ain't good. I have to make sure she doesn't rock the chariot too much. She ain't happy about me putting an end to her party, but she's better off more than a pancake. I admit, if I ignore the absolutely terrifying drop below, the view ain't bad. Still prefer the ground, though. It isn't until we've passed the city border that I realize this'll be Applebloom's first time in Canterlot proper. Oh no. I am really starting to wish I'd brought Winona's leash. You'll have to forgive me if I don't give you all the details about our trip through Canterlot. What should have been about a 15-minute walk turned into an hour-long adventure because some fella decided to wander off and take a bath in a public fountain. I'm still not sure on all the details, but there was something about some ghost turning an pony who set hoof in her fountain into a sea pony until Bloom found some family locket and broke the curse. Yeah, I'm as baffled as you are. After Applebloom had 4 legs again, lecture from me about wandering off, and a whole lot of complaining about the signs saying no public bathing, fiddly say away, that means you, Applebloom. I swear I ain't lying, being too small. We finally made it to the castle gates. Thankfully, the thrill of sea pony curse gave her just enough of a scare to stop her running off again. The princess meets us in the royal entryway, and as predicted, Bloom goes nuts. She starts running around her, shooting off questions and asking for early cutie mark privileges. Thank the stars Princess Celestia has a good sense of humor. She lets Bloom go on for a few minutes and answers what questions she can before politely nudging her back to my side. I'll admit it, I'm a little scared and a lot confused. Why in tarnation would Celestia just want me of all ponies? Sure, I'm a holder of an element of harmony, but so are the rest of the girls. Where are the rest of them? Don't make a lick of sense. finally asked what the hell I'm doing here. My dear little pony, you are here for a privilege no pony has had in over 1,000 years. To see truth. To see truth? What, are you gonna give me lie detector vision or something? Applebloom jumped up and down. Wow, can I have it too? The princess just laughed. Oh, nothing like that. What you take from this won't be anything in the physical sense. She gestured with her head and started walking. I had to trot a little faster than I was used to keep up. So, why'd you ask me to bring Applebloom? I glanced at my little sister behind me, who had somehow managed to stuff her cheeks with some fancy royal pastries while I wasn't looking. She is here to act as your anchor, Applejack. Nothing more. We stopped in front of some big, stupid fancy mare. Now, if you'll just wait a moment. Her horn glowed and touched the mare, and it started rippling like water on a pond surface. After a few seconds, it cleared to reveal a dark, stony stairwell. Applebloom gasped. Oh, was there treasure down there? Or a dragon? Or dragon treasure? Or a dragon made of treasure? Or the magic gem that's secretly the source of all key marks? Applebloom, don't go turning into Pinkie Pie, I chatted gently. The princess gave her a lightly amused glance before stepping through the mirror. I had to help Applebloom up before falling in myself. We obediently followed our Princess of the Sun down the staircase, and I heard a sort of slurpy noise from the mirror closing. Celestia's horn was the only sort of light down here. I really hope she doesn't suddenly need to teleport away somewhere and forget about us. The stones down here were rougher than the polished to perfection streets of Camelot, and twice as dusty. Applebloom kept her mouth shut on the way down. The very, very long way down. Applejack, Celestia said suddenly, almost startling me into missing a step. She kept her eyes forward. How have you been since Discord's second defeat? I've been doing better than most pony folk, I think. I know what I did wrong, and I'm not aiming to do it again. But Applejack, there's no way you'd ever— Not now, Applebloom, the princess hummed. Would you mind reminding me how Discord tainted you, Applejack? Well, I said hesitantly. We all got separated in the maze, and I wound up following some apples that remind me of my cutie mark. Then I ran into a bunch of apple trees, and some piles of apples talking about the Grove of Truth or something. They said I could ask any question I wanted. I asked how our quest would go, and they showed me and my friends breaking up. Discord told me the truth could be cruel, and eyes were kinder, and I was just heartbroken enough to believe him. But not anymore? Nope. I know now the truth ain't something to run from. You gotta face it head on. The princess hummed again. A realist's approach. How rare in a place like Equestria. I flinched. What, you saying it's wrong? It is neither right nor wrong, my little pony. Just a different perspective, is all. But I will ask you this just once. Are you sure in your convictions? I don't hesitate. Yes. Then we are here. Wait, what? When did we reach the end of the stairs? Those big doors couldn't have come out of nowhere, could they? Couldn't they have just teleported us down here? Applebloom whined. Applebloom! The doors had the same seal as the ones for the Elements of Harmony, except there was a second lock with the symbol of the moon on it, too. Celestia inserted her horn, and the lines on the door glowed for a second before they swung open. Still dark, dank, and dreary and whatnot, but Lord Almighty, this room was huge. Circular with a path down the middle, leading to a big basin covered by a spiral shutter like a camera. There was a lever on one side, and a whole lot of clockwork doohickeys climbing up the walls. We stepped inside, Applebloom completely silent for once, and I jumped at the sound of the door slamming shut behind us. At the sound, another pony stood and made her way towards us, and I saw— Princess Luna? A pleasure to meet you again. Applejack, was it? A shame we cannot use this time to get to know thee better, she said, way more casually than I'd expect from the Princess of the Night. Wow, so you're the princess who got possessed by those evil nightmare spirits, Applebloom said, spouting off the tabloid's preferred story for the princess's return to goodness. Close enough, I guess, Luna said awkwardly. She looked perfectly at home in the darkness, though she admitted to me on the way up that being cut off from the moon down here wasn't at all pleasant. Sister, it is time. Thou art sure about this, then? No, but she is, and therefore we must. Well, that wasn't cryptic at all. The alicorns walked to different ends of the room and inserted their horns into locks like the ones on the door. The clockwork on the walls creaked to life, and the shutter on the basin thing opened to reveal a pool of glass? Water? Whatever it was perfectly smooth and reflective. Some have called this the Well of Infinity, Celestia said, having trotted back to my side while I was looking at the pool. Others the Pool of Reflection, and still others Sanity's Tears. We simply call it Truth. But whatever name ponies give it, its purpose remains the same. To gaze into the pool is to see into Truth himself. I wasn't as distracted by all the fancy talk as some other ponies might be. Wait, if y'all have a magic all-seeing pool, why couldn't you use it to help beat Discord? How often do you even use it? Princess Celestia gave me a stern look. Truth is not merely a lexicon that shows you whatever you ask of it. The pool shows you what it wants you to see, regardless of how those truths may help you. And besides, the locking measure was designed to require the magic of 2 alicorns at full strength, and only recently has Luna recovered enough to lend her strength. I nodded meekly. Applebloom tilted her head. Lexa, what now? A large tome containing knowledge on a certain thing, Princess Luna said from our other side.
Oh, okay. Wait, if this thing knows a lot of stuff... Hey!
Apple Bloom clambered halfway over the stone railing and looked over the edge.
Well, of inflection or whatever. What's that Kenny Mark and how do I...
Apple Bloom! I grab her tail in my teeth and yank her away. It is all right, Applejack, Celestia chuckled. Apple Bloom is perhaps the safest one here.
Huh?
Apple Bloom is, more or less, still innocent. And to the vision of any innocent soul, truth is nothing more than a glorified mirror. Perhaps innocent isn't the best word for her, Princess Luna said lowly. I snorted. I see admit. Not what we meant. We see into every fool's dreams, young Applejack, and within young Apple Blooms we have seen horrors from which she may never fully recover. But even so, that she is yet to obtain her Cutie Mark shall suffice to grant her truth's mercy. My mind spun. I know Bloom had a few weeks a while back where she wasn't getting much sleep, but... Apple Bloom? What's she talking about? She will tell you when she is ready. Celestia shook her head. So she knows too. There are some pains which, when forced into the open, do more harm than good. And besides, your sister is here to help you. Help me? I know Celestia said something about her being an anchor up in the castle, but that could have meant anything. I was just about out of patience. Look, I think we're about as private as we can get in Equestria, so how about you get on with telling us what the hell we're doing down here? Princess Celestia spoke in her calmest, most princessy voice. Discord used you and your friends to attack Twilight Sparkle from all sides. He led to Pinkie Pie, pulled darkness from the depths of Rarity Bell's heart, forced his own darkness into Fluttershy, and gave Rainbow Dash an impossible choice. You, however, were crushed by the weight of your element, the realization that truth can, and often does, hurt. But even then, it was a manufactured truth. You fell apart in part from what he showed you, but for this Discord is not solely to blame. I suddenly didn't care I was talking to royalty. Hey, you saying I'm weaker than the others?
Hey, my big sister's the strongest there is! Ain't nothing weak about her!
Apple Bloom leapt to my defense. And it is because you believe that from the deepest parts of your heart that you are here, Apple Bloom. Something occurred to me. Wait, is this a trial for me or something, and Apple Bloom's gonna be my defense? Princess Celestia blinked at me in a rare show of surprise. What? No, what on earth gave you that idea? You are not on trial or being punished or anything like that, Applejack. You are here to learn. Learn what? Sayest thou that ye understand the harshness of truth, Luna chimed in. Yet until thou seest the true reality of that statement, as opposed to a vision manipulated to harm thee, thou and thine element will never reach thy full potential. Everything here is to help with thee, Applejack, not to test or punish thee. However, we cannot suffer thee to undergo this task without warning thee that to see pure, unadulterated truth is not without pain. Regardless of your choice, Applejack, I will not ask you to give up your element of honesty, or shame you in any way. This choice is entirely your own, Celestia finished. So, Applegale Jacqueline, the fifth of the fifth line, I ask you once, will you look into truth? Yes. I ask thee a second time, said Luna. Of thine own freedom of will, wilt thou gazeth unto truth? I said yes, didn't I? I ask you a third time. Looking into truth will bring you no small amount of pain, and to refuse will bring you no dishonor. Even knowing this, will you still look into truth?
Yes, dang it, 1,000,000 times yes!
I could feel Apple Bloom's eyes on me, just a tad bit frightened. Very well. Apple Bloom? Bloom startled. Stay at your sister's side no matter what, and believe in her strength. That is all I ask of you. Apple Bloom tilted her head.
Huh? How's that gonna help?
You are, as I said, her anchor, and more than that, her strength. No matter how far into truth she falls, you will always be there to ground her in reality. I thought I was supposed to face this truth thing on my own. Few ponies face life's challenges on their own, except by their own choice, and still fewer face truth in a vacuum. It would be unfair to force you to be the exception. I shook my head. All right, so how do we do this? Stand on the podium and gaze directly down. It shall not last a moment more than thou canst endure. The moment thou feeleth the weight of truth hath become too much, simply pull on the lever to thy right. The shutter shall close at once. We shall not judge thee for how long thou starest into truth's depths. I marched up to the pool with no small amount of apprehension. Apple Bloom pressed up beside me. The alicorns moved to stand at opposite ends of the pool and touch the surface with their horns. And I saw. Applejack gazed down into the pool, and the pool looked back. At first all she saw was her and Apple Bloom's reflections, and the dark ceiling above. Then she saw the alicorns in front of her, and the stairs leading to the castle, then Canterlot, Ponyville, and all Equestria. Then things changed. She wasn't just seeing, she was hearing, feeling, thinking. She wasn't just watching ponies through a window. She was them, all their joy and sorrow, and all their fears. And oh, there was fear. Aloe vera and Lotus Blossom of the Ponyville Day Spa shivered under their blankets, laid back to back. They'd spent all their lives proud to be twins, never far from one another. Yet now they could only feel revulsion at the other's touch. That blasted discord had merged them into a single two-headed pony with no rear end. Lotus whimpered at the memory. Aloe wanted so badly to confront her sister with a hug. The image of the two of them pulling against each other desperately froze her hooves. At least, she laughed morosely. They can finally make eye contact again. Button Mash aimlessly pushed around the vegetables on his plate. He'd lost all motivation to do much of anything after that big glitch monster had given him that new video game. He'd died so many times trying to find the golden ending of Dark Spirits, and in the end all he got was a crown for a kingdom he'd already destroyed. It wasn't like life was much better. Only a matter of time before everything withered and died, just like in the game. All he could do now was wait it out. A stallion with an hourglass key mark had taken his magic blue blocks into orbit as soon as Discord was defeated, and hadn't come down since. Every time he looked at the console, he remembered himself, dressed in the gaudy robes of his people, prancing around like he was royalty. Lo and behold, for I am the Time Lord victorious! All shall bow to my Time Lordiness, and feed me pears! Or... He'd pulled a toilet plunger out of nowhere and started slapping the nearest pony with it, cackling madly. Exterminate! The filly twist hadn't eaten any candy in weeks. She couldn't bear the sight of them, even though she made herself. Those endless spirals. All she saw were her legs and neck twisting like taffy, curling around everything like snakes. Spirals, spirals! The word echoed in her mind like an endless mantra. Haviland looked in the mirror for the 10th time that day. No, her hide was its normal yellow, and her eyes weren't glowing. She wasn't one of them. Maybe just one more check. Sweetie Belle threw out her doll collection, the one she'd painstakingly built up over the years. She couldn't bear the looks on their pretty cloth faces. When she looked at them, all she could think about was the stitches forced onto her own limbs, the dance she'd been made to do with that other filly-turned doll. Across town, Diamond Tiara did the same to her own collection, albeit with more of a tantrum. The shattered porcelain of her expensive dolls littered the floor. It's not fair! She screamed. It's not fair! Mama was free and I couldn't even hug her! It's not fair! The few servants who dared peek into her room only got dolls thrown at them for their trouble. Discord had turned her into a pony-sized doll and made her waltz with a white doll. Then they'd popped off their limbs and started trading body parts. Her telling mother had just hovered above the chaos with her favorite green beanie, and laughed. The unicorn Lyra and the earth pony Bonbon kept coming up with excuses not to come near each other. Normally finding the two apart was impossible. Lyra remembered more than Bonbon. Her voice had been cursed to sound like an out-of-tune harp, and it sang gleefully as she was made to stomp on her partner, over and over, delighting in the creamy chocolate filling that oozed out of the cracks. When the rainbow washed over her, she barely stopped herself from hanging herself with her own harp strings. Silverspoon spent all her time outside of school locked in her room, unable to face her father. She remembered him, with hooves turned to axe blades, happily chasing her down and trying to chop the metallic filly into lumps of silver. She wondered if it was better or worse that Silver Axe hadn't tried to apologize to her yet. Photo Finish tripped over the triple-layered dress she was wearing again, though thankfully not in front of her entourage this time. Somehow the footage from the security cameras in front of her home had gotten to the tabloids, showing her running around the estate naked, bits of her own dress shredded in her mouth. Blue Blood screamed in terror at the sight of the sun again, once more forcing the castle guards to escort him to his blacked-out room. A few weeks ago, he'd been turned into a mare of living ice, and been forced to run for his life from a stallion made of sunfire who wanted nothing more than to ravish him. Philomena wouldn't go into her cage, even when Celestia outright ordered to, instead of roosting in the tallest parts of the castle. She'd burst into flame every time Discord tried to change her and reformed as herself, until he eventually got bored and simply tossed her ashes into the smallest jar he could find and chucked it in a fountain. A once blue unicorn sat motionlessly at her family's dinner table, uncaring of her family's desperate attempts to get through to her. She hadn't cared about anything in weeks. Why would she? She was nobody. Octavia adjusted her soundproof earmuffs with a wince. Her fellow orchestra members had barely stopped her from ripping her own ears off when the world was repaired. Even now, she insisted on writing out all her messages instead of speaking. Oh, she wished she could forget the agony Discord had inflicted on her, amplifying even the smallest shifting of dust to the roar of a rock concert, to say nothing of the screaming and wailing of every other pony in Canterlot. As the cacophony droned on without end, she'd first wished she hadn't been in Canterlot that day, then wished she'd never joined the orchestra, then wished she'd never picked up that cello, and finally wished she'd never been born at all, if only the horrible noise would just stop. Derpy Hooves held her child close that night, as she had every other since Discord's defeat, refusing to let her out of her sight for even a minute. She kept whispering, "Mama loves you. Mama's sorry. Mama won't hurt you. Mama didn't mean it. Mama loves you. Mama's sorry." The memories wouldn't go away. Discord had fixed everything wrong with her, her eyes, her speech, even her clumsiness. only to force her to trot up to her child, now proud to be a Pegasus like her mother, and coldly tell her that she would never be her child, that she'd been adopted all this time, and Derpy had never loved her, and she wished Dinky had died before Derpy found her. This was the first night they hadn't cried each other to sleep in weeks. Mare had done more work these past 2 weeks than she had in months. That's not to say she'd been a slacker before, just that now she worked tirelessly from sunup to sundown, only ever eating in the brief moments between meetings. I do care about all of you, I promise, she'd mutter under her breath when she thought nobody was listening. At the very least, her hard work was doing a good job of blocking out the memory of a pony turned to living stone, shouting into a megaphone how she'd wasted her life in this town and could have been an administrator in Canterlot by now, all while completely ignoring the ponies hurting themselves around her. Carrot Top's mane had begun to show its green roots again. She didn't try to diet this time. She simply went about her farming for the day with a big smile on her face, greeted every pony in Ponyville with a friendly wave, and went straight to her bedroom to muffle her sobs with a pillow. Memories flashed through her mind of herself, graze every pony around her, running around town with an axe in her mouth, screaming about how much she hated the color green and attacking anyone with even the barest hint of it on their figure. Snips and Snails had been strangely quiet, and hadn't caused any trouble since Discord's fall. Really, they hadn't done much of anything. They flinched at almost every sound these days. Having been left with the brains of dogs, they'd spent Discord's brain running from their lives from a strangely fast giant snail and a massive pair of floating scissors. Looking at their key marks now had to be done in short glances. Rainbow Dash relived the memory of her betrayal in her nightmares, as she had every night since. How she arrived at Closdale, how Discord announced her betrayal to the entire town, how they hated her, loathed her, and how they were punished anyway. And all she could do was flee, from them and from her friends, and pray to Celestia that they never realized her actions were her own. Applejack tasted salt. Her eyes stung. Applebloom's warm presence was the only thing keeping her from collapsing to her knees. She reached for the lever, nearly crushed by the weight of so much grief. And yet, Applejack stood with her friends and listened to them chat about Rarity's decision to help Diamond Tiara. They all knew about the filly's mother, of course, but they hadn't paid her much mind beyond her existence as one of Discord's pets. They hadn't expected Rarity to go so far out of her way to help her in the slightest. Spike was just happy she'd found something to drive away the shadows Discord had left her with, even if he wasn't sure the spoiled filly deserved it. Except, no, this wasn't Applejack. It couldn't be. It was Applejack, but it wasn't, and these weren't her friends. Why did they look like... Applejack that wasn't Applejack's ears twitched, and suddenly she was staring right at her, and those green eyes bore into her, piercing, heavier than the weight of anything she'd seen thus far. One hoof shot out to pull the lever. The other, as stubborn as its owner, reached for a point just below. The lever pulled. Nothing happened. I won't turn away. I'm done running away from the truth. Let me see it all. I'm not afraid! The green airs narrowed in understanding, and truth did as it was willed. Applebloom, scared out of her wits, galloped like mad through the everfree forest, eyes facing forward, giving no mind to the undead, skeletal remains of ponies rising out of the ground behind her, begging her to stay in Sunnytown and be happy. The image split. In one, Applebloom found Twilight and followed her out of the everfree, safe and sound. In the other, the residents of Sunnytown welcomed their new friend. 2 days later, that world's Applejack was tearing through the everfree, bucking trees left and right, snarling and swearing to any god that would hear her that she'd tear the entire forest apart until it coughed up her little sister. Her friends helped where they could, but 3 days in, they had to restrain her to keep her from working herself to death. She ripped right through the restraints and got back to work. Sakura was the one who finally showed her the right path, and Applejack galloped into Sunnytown on battered and bleeding hooves to find a black-coated zombie with a pretty pink hair bow. With eyes like slits, Applejack tore Sunnytown to its foundations. Twilight, Sparkle, and Trixie stood on a stone platform supported by a long, rickety staircase, surrounded by churning black storm clouds. Twilight had her element perch on her head, while Trixie was wearing a black amulet. When Applejack got a glimpse of her flanks and her trademark cloak, she saw that Trixie's key mark was an exact mirror of Twilight's. From the stairs, Twilight screamed, "Says stop this!" Above her, Trixie snarled, "We're not sisters! Celestia may have raised us together, but she only ever considered you worthy of anything! That's a lie! Trixie, who's been filling your head with this nonsense?" The image blurred. Now it was Trixie on the stairs, begging her foster sister Twilight to stop this madness and come home to their adopted mother Luna. A gray and broken Twilight tragedy attempted to make her bed after a swarm of flying squids had disrupted it, and blinked at the hastily scribbled letters on her horn writing that fell from the sheets. She hadn't written those, had she? Sometime later, the same Twilight, now merely gray-tinted, met with a filly named Apple Pie, a descendant of both Applebloom and one of Pinky's sisters. Twilight asked how Applebloom could remain so positive amid all this tragedy. The filly simply smiled. "Hey, even in the darkest of times, you gotta find something to laugh about." A lavender alicorn stood tall at the edge of her universe, gazing serenely into the abyss. Dear Princess Celestia, she murmured, this is my atonement. Look upon this moment, my wonderful teacher. This shall be what lights the darkness, a chance for every pony to be happy. Your faithful student, Twilight Sparkle. Then her horn ignited, and the starscape was overtaken by a flash of blinding, brilliant light. The scenes shifted again, now branching out from Applejack's presence rather than her past. She saw Winona as an old dog Applebloom had to carry around on her back, then a grave for the poor pup, surrounded by her older, grieving family. Then another grave for Granny Smith when Applebloom reached adulthood, and others for Applejack and Big Mac when Applebloom was a withered old mare. Then Applebloom's grave, surrounded by her loving children. Elsewhere, a massive adult Spike carried a palanquin on his back, holding an elderly Rarity in a dazzling cloak and a face veil. He showed no resentment, only pride. The scenes shifted again, Rarity's wrinkled form lay motionless in the weeping dragon's claws. The elderly form of Sweetie Belle nuzzled him gently through her own tears. Applejack's right hoof pushed the lever. Applejack's left hoof ached. Applejack cried. A flash of images went by of she and her friends, meeting together beneath Twilight's tree. Twilight grew wings. The tree changed to crystal. Spike grew up. And slowly, slowly, they grew old and frail, until all were grays in the ground. All except for Twilight, who watched over them solemnly with Spike by her side. Years after their deaths, Equestria was thriving under the new princess, the royal sisters having retired after their millennia-long reign. Princess Twilight Sparkle showed the ideas of friendship and harmony across the land, making peace with each of the neighboring kingdoms until the lines between nations blurred. Griffins, dragons, thestrals, diamond dogs, and 1,000 other races Applejack had only ever heard of in fairy tales, all united under the banner of friendship. The new princess took a new protege every generation, just as Celestia had before her, always ensuring that someone new would be able to take up the mantle of magic should her own powers fail her. She loved them each as her own children, and she mourned them each as dearly as she had her precious friends. Centuries passed, and despite Twilight's best efforts, war broke out. Applejack never got to see what caused it, though she caught fleeting glimpses of a new, dark alicorn hidden in the shadows. The tribes argued and fought and killed, and when finally rumors broke out that the unicorns had worked out a way to end their opponents for good, Twilight knew she had no other choice. She gathered the generation's element bearers, who could do little against the dull miasma of hatred built up over the years, and helped them to reforge the elements into 3 gems, one for each of the main tribes. Then, entrusting the gems to her dear heroes, she split the tribes by force, casting a mist over the lands that would prevent them finding one another until the flames of war calmed. The last of her strength spent, Princess Twilight Sparkle left Equestria, hopeful that her little ponies would succeed where she could not. Decades later, Sunny Star Scout listened to her father's stories about her great-great-grandfather Shooting Star Scout, who had built them their lighthouse to protect Equestria's greatest treasure. What that treasure really was, her father would never say. For a fleeting flicker of an instant, Applejack saw Celestia and Luna stood before a wasteland, gazing into a dying sun. Luna put a wing over her sister and whispered something, and they walked together into nothing before Applejack was once more pulled away. A pink unicorn sat next to an earth pony in a yellow scarf at a piano. "Thank you, Luster Dawn, for letting me experience this wonderful world with you," he whispered. She nuzzled him gently in return. The image shifted. Atop a massive, twisting tower stood 6 figures facing a black alicorn. 2 pairs of feathered wings spread behind it, and a bone-white mask hid its face. Its key mark was a scythe in the skull. The moment ponies devoured the fruit of knowledge, they sealed their fates. Trusting their future to magic, ponies cling to a dim hope. Yes, harmony is the means by which all is revealed. Beyond the beaten path lies the absolute end. It matters not who you are. Death awaits you. Below him, the pink unicorn stepped forward, the element of magic on her head shining bright. The others behind her all bore elements of their own, though only one other was a pony.
Living means not cowering before death. It's about what you leave behind, not whether or not you'll always be here. That's why, if you say Equestria's time to die is now, we'll fight you to the bitter end to prove you wrong.
Black Alicorn hung his head, and the note of resignation in his voice is what Applejack finally recognized him as the Earth Pony from before. "Then come to me, Luster Dawn. This battle is a path of your own choosing." Applejack saw herself, unmarked, turning away from the window to go to an early morning show with her aunt and Uncle Orange. Then, years later, an adult mare with a fashionably short mane, a pretty little business suit, and a trio of orange-shaped jewels on her flank stepped out of her apartment, more confident and open than Applejack had ever seen herself. In a way, she reminded her of Rarity. After that faithful summer solstice, the heroes of Equestria paid a visit to Manhattan on some official royal business, and the mare now called Golden Dream was asked to give them a tour. She accepted, of course. Let it never be said that the most successful business pony in Manhattan didn't know how to network. But she didn't realize why they'd asked until she saw them get off the train.
"Big Macintosh!" she gasped, rushing up to embrace him at once. "Goodness, I wouldn't have expected you in a million years!"
She asked her brother over lunch why he hadn't mentioned the visit, or his being one of Equestria's new heroes. He sheepishly admitted that it was sort of embarrassing, being the only stallion in a group of mares, and one of his friends thought it would be fun to surprise her. The mare in question chimed her agreement with a cloud of confetti.
You should visit more often, dear. You know I always have a place for you.
You could visit the farm too, you know. Apple Bloom hasn't seen you since she was 5. I'm sure she'd love to thank you for them expensive dolls and pony.
I've told you before, Big Macintosh. I have my responsibilities here. I can't simply abandon everyone over a fit of nostalgia.
I'm not talking about forever, just a visit. I promise Granny Smith won't try to guilt trip you this time. I suppose I do have an opening sometime in the next few months. The image shifted again, and split down the middle. On one side, Applejack met a polite but down-to-earth stallion in a Ponyville fair. They got to chatting, and she learned that he'd been a drifter, passing through many towns but never settling in one. He found himself drawn to her, though, saying it was nice to meet a mare who didn't play mind games with him. 2 years later, she lay in Ponyville Hospital, her husband by her side, holding her newborn son. Her whisper of the foal's name was lost to an invisible wind. On the other, Golden Dream spent that year's disaster of a gala talking to a rather adventurous unicorn stallion who thought the element bearer's shenanigans hilarious. She sought him out the next year, and kept making excuses to see him again, and again, until finally she said to hell with tradition and gave him the ring herself. Once again, years later, a proud mother lay in her bed, cradling a unicorn filly to her chest. And once again, all Applejack could hear of her name was a brushing in her own ears.
No, Applejack whispered. It ain't fair. It ain't fair!
Applejack stared into the pool, her eyes wide as billiard balls, her pupils swallowing her irises, tears streaming down her face. Not fair. Ain't fair. Celestia shouted an alarm for the 3rd time, unable to move lest she cut the connection to the pool prematurely and risk even further damage.
Applejack, that is enough! Just stop!
Applejack didn't respond. Her hoof pushed the lever once more. Nothing happened. Luna finally realized what was happening.
Celestia, her hubs!
Apple Bloom looked down at the same time Celestia did, and cried out in alarm. While one of Applejack's hooves was indeed pushing and pulling on the lever desperately, the other had lodged itself in the gears, keeping the truth open for far, far longer than any mortal could bear. There was no way in Tartarus that had been an accident.
Apple Bloom, Luna shouted. Pull thy sister's hoof out of the gates, right now!
Apple Bloom didn't hesitate, the command finally forcing her mind from its panic-fueled state. The instant the battered, bleeding hoof was pulled free, the shutter clicked shut. Applejack stumbled back at once, falling to her flank. She was shaking, staring into nothing.
You stupid pony! Luna cursed, rushing to her side now the connection was broken. Thou needed not prove with anything to us!
Not now, Luna, Celestia scolded, though she too was seething inside. Why, oh why do Applejacks insist on being the most stubborn of ponies? Luna growled under her breath, but set about healing Applejack's injured hoof, then stepped back to let Apple Bloom comfort her sister until the shaking stopped. Why? Celestia asked once Applejack had recovered enough to answer, surely upset with one of her ponies for the first time in a very long while. The force in her voice made Apple Bloom's ears pin back. Applejack spoke in halting tones, still breathing hard. I said I wouldn't be scared of the truth, so I wasn't gonna let myself run away. I wanted to see it all. Celestia let out a small, disbelieving laugh. Blinking away tears, she knelt and wrapped her wings around the silly little pony.
Applejack, you did that on purpose?
Had to show that truth fella I ain't scared of him, Applejack said, finally closing her eyes. The last few tears trickled down her cheeks. Apple Bloom buried her face in her sister's chest, and Applejack curled around her gratefully. Distantly, Luna was reminded of herself and Celestia. Princess, Applejack asked, lifting her face from her sister's mane to look Celestia in the eye. I saw a lot of stuff in there, but some of it, is all that really truth? Gazing into truth long enough will sometimes cause it to show other roads. Some may be your future, some may be the pasts of others. Apple Bloom turned awkwardly in Applejack's hoof.
Other versions? What y'all talking about?
Luna opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of something and instead knelt down to tap her horn on Apple Bloom's forehead. We promise thou wilt remember every detail of today when thou wakest up. But for now, have sweet dreams. Dream of Ruby and thy friends. Dream away thy monsters. And know that you have naught to fear, because thy family is here for you. Apple Bloom fell asleep in an instant. Did you really need to put her to sleep? Applejack asked. Luna shook her head, clearing away the slight dizziness of mana drain. Ye have many questions, and thou wouldst not speak them all in her presence. This way, she is protected from truths a filly should not be forced to bear. Applejack couldn't argue with that. She looked in the vague direction of the pool, eyes distant. So, my daughter, and my son, they're both real, but that ain't fair. This is the pain that truth brings, Applejack. The realization that fate is rarely fair, Celestia answered. I wasn't sure what you'd see exactly, but I knew it was likely you'd see paths unexplored. Many do. But I felt it. I loved them both. I always told myself I'd have been miserable there, or I'd have become one of them selfish, arrogant snobs. I told myself if I stayed, if I somehow found happiness there, I'd just be making others miserable. I never thought I could find something wonderful there. Neither of them deserve to just not exist. Luna shook her head gently. Both exist within their own branch, Applejack. They made the choices that brought them there, and will continue to make choices in their own wonderful worlds. And no matter their choices, they will make you proud. Applejack felt as though an imperceptible weight had been lifted from her back. Thanks. I think I understand now. I knew every pony back home was suffering, but I'd just been bunching them all together, like they were having the same problem. Like I didn't really get that it was real before now. She yawned, and with a chuckle, Celestia levitated her onto her back. The gentle motions of her track back up the stairs could lure the exhausted pony to sleep. Luna did the same with Apple Bloom. Such a silly pony, Luna sighed. I know, Lulu, I know. And she's wonderful for it. The apples were left one of the royal guest rooms, where they were left to sleep for the next few hours until it came time to return home. Apple Bloom seemed calmer when she woke up, less hyperactive than before, though she still gazed at the city sights with wonder and joy in her eyes. And Applejack, she spent the trip thinking. Applejack didn't get much farm work done the next day. She had work to do. Before she even sat down for breakfast, she took the time to play with Nona, telling her what a good dog she was. She told Granny Smith that she'd always be a wonderful dancer over pancakes, and told Big Macintosh that he was just as much as a hero to her as she and her friends were to Equestria. She sat down with Apple Bloom and finally asked her about her adventure in the Everfree. Tears were shed, hugs were shared, and Applejack let her know how very proud she was that Apple Bloom had been so brave that night. She took a moment to write out a letter to Aunt and Uncle Orange, apologizing for not keeping contact and saying that she'll always consider them family. Then, with a little help from Twilight's cloud-walking spell and Pinky's flying contraption, she paid Rainbow Dash a visit. The Pegasus was about as shocked to see her as you'd imagine, but she invited her in like any friend would. Applejack wasted no time in saying, Rainbow Dash, I know what happened in Cloudsdale that day, and I'm not mad. No matter what you did, Discord would have twisted it to hurt ya. I promise, Dash, none of us would ever blame you for doing what you thought you had to. Rainbow Dash's eyes welled up, and in moments she was sobbing in Applejack's hooves. They spent a long while like that, crying together and letting the pain out. But she couldn't spend all day with her friend. She had a lot of other ponies on her list. To Aloe and Lotus, just opening the spa for the day, your bond with each other is still your greatest strength. If you let each other be broken apart because of that bastard, you're just letting him have the last laugh. To Button Mash, curled up beneath a tree. Listen, kid, just cause some game tells you nothing matters, that don't mean it's true. There's so much more to life than just death and destruction if you let yourself look for it. To the pony in the blue box, of course back into town to refuel. Look, I don't know a lot about ya, but whatever Discord did to you affected the rest of us too. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You ain't alone in this, no matter how different you may think you are from the rest of us. To Twist, hanging out with new friends. Hey, you're friends with my sister, right? Look, I know she ain't hung out with you much since you got your mark and she formed her club, but she'd be there for you if you asked, just like your parents. She ain't gonna abandon you just cause you got your mark and she don't. To Sweetie Belle, on her way to another Crusader adventure. Look at your sister, Sweetie Belle. After Discord, she acted like she was walking on nails around her own jewels. But she fought it, and beat it. And if she can, then you can too. Those dolls are yours, you're not theirs. To Diamond Tiara, well, let it never be said that she didn't try. The guards around her manor threw her out without a second thought, no matter her status as hero of Equestria. Applejack had no choice but to walk away and try to corner her another day. To Lyra, then later to Bonbon. You know you'd never hurt Bonbon. You weren't yourself that day. Yeah, I know what they say about hypnosis, but that weren't no hypnosis. That was a chaos god scrambling your head to get a laugh. Don't let that scumbag ruin something good just cause you're too scared of yourself to face her. To Silver Spoon, alone on a bench avoiding going home. Your glasses help you see, but they aren't actually a part of you. And your name is just a name, it don't mean you actually are Silver. Your Miss Cheerly is a teacher, and her name don't have nothing to do with her job. You can be whatever you want to be. And kid, do you really think your dad wanted to hurt you? If you don't know your pa well enough to know, maybe it's time to change that. To the intercom in front of Photo Finish's house. Look, lady, I know you don't know who the heck I am, and I don't know foo about your fashion business. But I do know that them gossip rags are a load of horse apples, and I know you know that too. It's pretty dang obvious those dresses mean a lot to you, and so does your image, but letting them rags get to you is just encouraging them. To Derpy Hubs at the post office. You're doing a great job raising Dinky. I've never seen him on or Philly as close as you two. And I promise I'm not exaggerating. You love each other too much to let what Discord did to you break you apart. To Mare, she gave no grand speech, just a sincere thank you for all her hard work and a few apple fritters she'd brought with her. It touched the haggard mare all the same. To Carrot Top at the farmer's market. I know you've always been scared of other ponies' opinions, but anyone who blames you for what Discord made you do is a donkey's behind. You're not a thug and you're not a Billy. You're just a farmer, same as me. I know you don't have anything to be ashamed of. To Snips and Snails, found going home after a long day. Your key marks are always something to be proud of. They're a mark of what makes you you. You shouldn't be afraid of them just because something that looked like them tried to hurt you, so raise your heads high. 3 more letters joined those to her aunt and uncle, all addressed to Canterlot. One to Blue Blood, reminding him that his auntie loved him, would never let her son hurt him, and advising him to take the experience as a message that he needs to re-examine how he treats the mares he chases. One to Philomena, though addressed to Celestia in the hopes that the princess would read it for her, expressing her admiration for the bird and having thwarted Discord for as long as she did. And one to Octavia Melody, asking him that she not abandon the thing that made her truly, sincerely happy just because the mad god sought to toy with her. Applejack wasn't a fool. She knew a few kind words from a total stranger wouldn't be enough to solve anything, no matter how much sense those words made. Many would only brush them aside or ignore them, and a few might be driven deeper into the darkness because of them. But she had no regrets. If nothing else, her words would help them down the path to recovery, a balm to soothe the wounds carved by Discord's claws. There was one pony she knew she couldn't help, at least not on her own. With Luna's moon high in the sky, she made her way to the library. Hey, Applejack, I've heard from Pinkie Pie you've been really busy today. Sure have, Twilight. Don't worry, this is just something I need to do today. I'll be back to the usual by tomorrow. But I've got one last item on the list, and I think you're the only pony who can help them. Oh, really? What do you need me to do? There's a mare in Huffington who never woke up. She needs you, Twilight.